Kalimera, kalispera, kalinichta. No matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be, thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. The show was scheduled for 9:45. I said I'm going to be about 5 minutes. We can watch the last 5 minutes together. And it turns out there's 11 minutes of added time. All right, so let's watch the end of the game together. And coming up shortly is Mr. Ben Jacobs. This is the Highbury Squad. This is Monday Madness. Let's rock and roll, squaddies.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Hello, hello. Well, who'd have thought this game would be at this point after Anthony Gordon made the most ridiculous challenge on Virgil van Dijk, left him scarred. He's going to have to soak in an ice bath. Well, they always do soak in an ice bath. But yeah, here we are. So I guess this is like a 5-minute watch along. Let me get rid of this thumbnail. Squaddies, where are you? You're right there. Squaddies at ease, at ease. Welcome to another edition of Monday Madness. I'm sure more will be joining once the final whistle goes. It is where I'm watching. I'm on a little bit of a delay, I think. It's on 93 minutes and 20 seconds. And everyone wants Newcastle to hold out or even grab a winner. Let me tell you, this is one of the best 10-man performances I've seen in a really long time. Tenacious, belief, the determination to just want to beat Liverpool with everything going on is quite incredible. Let's see what we got. Let's say hello to some folks in the house. Our chief like officer, of course, Tammy Steels is here. Please do listen to her and give us a subscribe and a like. To those listening on our audio platforms, Apple and Spotify, thank you so much for joining as well. Subscribe and leave a review. It helps the show. Good evening, Morgie. How are you? Hope everyone in Blighty's had a good bank holiday weekend. I know that we Arsenal fans have had a superb holiday weekend. Michael, Galispera to you too. Ian is here. Carol is here as well. Let's see. We got Alison. We got Demsek. We got Del Boy in the house. Hello. I could have been a millionaire. One of the best shows ever. Enjoying Come On The Tune. My favorite nephew is a Newcastle fan. Nice one, Sophie. Good evening to you, John, as well. And your nephew. Hello to Terence. Good evening, squaddies, all the way around. Thank you so much for joining. And here we go. There's a corner. I'm probably behind you guys. Hi, John. Sophie, squaddies. It's a safe place. Big Kev looking over the squaddies always. That's absolutely right. Here's the bow tie. Always rocking that on the broadcast. Ryan. Make sure they all behave tonight. I'm sure they will. PW, good evening to you too. Hello, everybody. This is funny. Dean, has someone stolen Stan's checkbook because we're on a mad one this summer? Someone has whipped out the American Express Black Card, haven't they? Good evening, Cape Town. My uncle, my first cousins, live in South Africa, wonderful place. Let me know where in the world you are too. Let's see where all the squaddies are this fine Monday evening. We'll be joined shortly by Mr. Ben Jacobs. And I agree with you as well, Albert. Newcastle have been outstanding. I'm sure I'm going to learn how to pronounce Piero Hincapié's name correctly. I actually think I may have nailed it already. Albert's going to let me know for sure. We'll be looking at some Arsenal news with Ben. We'll also be asking him about any last-minute shockers in the transfer window. And I wanted to start off as we're watching this game unfold together. How many minutes left, squaddies? This is going to be so interesting for anyone listening on audio, isn't it? By the way, it is hot. Let me tell you. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. I am sweating like swine. Absolutely sweating like swine. It's so hot. By the way, there's a new article up on the Highbury Squad website written by Patrick Duke. You guys can go check it out. It's a report from the game at the weekend. A really good piece that Patrick has written. And there's some generic pieces coming up, one on the Arsenal Academy, and then another one on Mikel Arteta, and one that Patrick wrote where I was like, are you sure you want to do this? He's like, yeah. So an article where he talks about Dalman and Dennis Bergkamp. So make of that what you wish. You can read it when it comes out. In the meantime, I'm going to put the link to the current article. Please go check it out. Really good analysis from the game at the weekend. I should have just like stayed off air until this game finished. Hi, Ugu Quotru. Welcome. Welcome. Has it been hot in England? Yes. 5 minutes to go. Come on, you Gunners from Winnipeg, Canada. Love that. Absolutely love that. Albert, I know. Southeast London. Terence is in Ukraine. Oh, jeez. I probably shouldn't say that out loud. Jesus. My audio is breaking up. Anyone else got the same issue? Please don't tell me that you have any audio issues. Albert says, I definitely said his surname wrong. I knew it. There's absolutely guaranteed that I would say his name wrong. Hopefully everyone can hear me clearly. Demsek says his audio is breaking up. He did have an issue last time. I didn't think it was my issue. So let me know if you can't hear, and we will try and fix it. And if we can't, we can't. As we're watching this game unfold to ease the nerves, I wanted to point out, yes, it is. Just got out of the shower. I wanted to talk about this real quick before Ben came on as well, and might make it easier to watch these last couple of minutes, hoping Liverpool do not grab a winner. I've seen that Arsenal fans have another petition. It wasn't enough that we had one just 3 weeks ago. Now we have another petition. The first one, the very first one was, the vitriolic response to Madueke. How dare we sign him? How dare we pick up another Chelsea reject? Why are we paying 50 million plus for this guy? Well, now we want to tell the club fans should vote on statues. And I just think it gets into murky water when we start talking about, statues and who deserves one and who doesn't. Oh, man. Just when you thought it was safe, it's the hope that kills you. Unfortunately, it is Newcastle United 2, Liverpool 3. And they literally have stolen it. How did that happen? This is what champions do, people. They persevere, they find a way, they overcome adversity. Even when they're not playing well, they snatch games. And these are the things that we need to learn. Liverpool once again demonstrating that they're going to be tough to beat. Yes, I've heard many people say that it's harder to play sometimes against 10 men than it is 11. Regardless of who's in front of you, you need to close a game, always be closing. Newcastle, valiant. What an effort. It's, unfortunately for them, hasn't worked out at home in a game where they desperately wanted to win to prove a point. It was a really good breaking goal. And Bosch, smack bang, right in the back of the net. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, on game over. I mean, unless there's a miracle here, I can't see it. But Newcastle United now have how many minutes? Maybe couple of minutes to try and salvage a point from this game. They held on as long as they could, grabbed 2 goals after going 2 down. I mean, brilliant stuff from Eddie Howe, making his players still believe in this game. But Liverpool have been atrocious. They were atrocious against Bournemouth as well. And by the way, can we start talking about the world record signing for them? Florian Wirtz. It's done nothing yet. People wanted to point the finger at Victor Gyökeres and talk about how sluggish he looks. He looks overweight. And I was actually listening to Andy Goldstein today talk about to Darren Bent. And Darren Bent, for me, who's usually really good at defending the realm, said that Gyökeres' first goal was clumsy. Clumsy. I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've heard all day. Takes on 3 players, glides past them, and his shot bang in the back of the net. And he called it clumsy. So Sesko, who has really not shown too much, of course, a lot of these players aren't match fit yet, but Sesko hasn't shown much either. And once again, you know, the media grabbing headlines, as everyone knows, is you get more clicks if you bitch and talk about Arsenal. And I was talking to a couple of friends in a WhatsApp group today as well. And it's the same thing with some YouTubers. You know, it gets more clicks if you talk about Arsenal. And, you know, I guess that's a compliment, really. I bet that, you know, it's easier to talk about the team that gets you more clicks than it is about your own team sometimes. And I'm going to try not to rise to the bait. So I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to give my opinion, but I'm not going to get heated and I'm not going to let it get into my soul and bother me as it has done in seasons past. Because I tell you, this season, we've got the squad, we've got the team to be able to really challenge. We're stronger. I mean, I would argue that our bench yesterday was better than Liverpool's bench today. Go on at me if you disagree, but I really do think that we have got what it takes to stick and challenge. And look at, you know, Liverpool, the way they're winning. They're going to get complimented tonight for being dogged, for grinding, for defending, for playing as a unit against a home team that was hungry and looking for the victory. So Arsenal's performance at Old Trafford, which I've put my hands up and gone back and watched and said to you guys, it was a brilliant defensive performance. Liverpool are going to get so much credit for winning this game and grinding it out, whereas they played poorly, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. If we go and play sexy football somewhere and get thrashed, Arsenal are naive. What are they doing? If we go somewhere and play defensive football, you know, we're boring. So at the end of the day, it's night. And when you wake up in the morning, the headlines will be the same. It just won't change for the Arsenal. So I take it with a pinch of salt. And it's aggravating, but, you know, at the end of this, we just have to stick out and be there to be challenging. You know, come the last 2 or 3 months of the season. Don't let this lot get away with it. And, you know, once again, they've been able to do what champions do, and that's close the deal and get 3 points. And that's just how it works. Listen to Ryan, hit the like button, and it will make you feel better. Let's see. You've won if you don't phone in. That's the object of the exercise. You know, Newman, I don't often agree with you, but I agree with you. They do. They've played Bournemouth and Newcastle team with 10 men, right? They haven't really been tested yet. And there are a lot better teams than Bournemouth. Newcastle are a good team, but of course they're missing Isaac up front. Could he have made the difference tonight? A player like him, you have to say yes, because you can't be naive that way. Trevor said they're playing the same way we played against Manchester United, Sophie. Marina says we have a team. Sean says, well, no, so if Jamie O'Hara having a saltier take than the Dead Sea was worse. Couldn't criticize the Gyökeres goal, so he called fans mimicking his celebration cringe. I also need to have a chat with my mate, Jason Cundy, calling the Eze. They were both calling the Eze announcement and him walking onto the pitch cringe. Now, this is where you have to differentiate true opinion versus clickbaiting, right? That was pure clickbaiting. This whole cringe FC. So Gyökeres' celebration is cringe, but Cole Palmer, what a lad, eh? What a lad Cole Palmer is with his celebration. It's ridiculous. It's absolute fishing expedition. And they throw the bait out and they know that we'll bite. You know why? We bite not because you want to get in a fight. You bite because you want to defend what you love. You know, it's like a family event. someone goes off and someone's out of order and you're going to defend what's right, right? And it's like defending a family member. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous to say that his celebration is cringe. Now, is it cringe when adults do it? That's up for debate if you want to have that conversation. But this notion and this, I tell you something, guys, if we can pull this off this year, if we win the league, it will go dark. There will be no light. It will be the most spectacular feeling on the planet. I've got to say, of course, I love Anfield 89 and I love the Invincibles. But there's a good chance that just because of new media, social media, the chaos out there, you know, YouTubers now, you've got traditional networks, you've got it all. I think that if we win the title this season, it might be my favorite of all time. Only because the tears, the saltiness, all of it, it will be glorious. It will be spectacular. We could feed off it for a very, very long time. And Dan said it 2 seasons ago. He goes, Soph, if we win the league, the streets aren't ready. And you know what? The streets won't be ready. And I, for one, want to win it just because I want to win the title. But I also want to win it because I just want to shove it down everyone's gob. And it will be pleasurable. And I will take huge satisfaction in doing that. Right, hit the like button, everybody. Well, you could say this to his face if you want, Terence, because he's going to be on the show on Friday. Stevie Nicol joining the show live on Friday to talk about Liverpool, Arsenal versus Liverpool. The legend returns. And no matter what you say about Stevie, whether you think he's salty, and of course he's going to be salty against Arsenal. What do you guys expect? Michael Thomas broke his ankles at Anfield in '89. How you lose a game of darts or a game of snooker to a mate of yours and you're salty? Liverpool were about to lift the title, and 1 minute, and we took it away from them. And Stevie Nicol was in the middle of it. He was in the trenches. He was right there. And yet he still comes on this show. I've been talking football with him for 10 years. He's been on this show since day one. And, you know, if you don't think Stevie is going to be salty towards Arsenal, then maybe you missed Anfield 89 altogether. That was a brilliant game of football. Agree with you, Sin. Jeffrey, come on, Arsenal. Henky Ho says, I hate that Liverpool got those 2 late goals. Those late goals 2 games in a row. That's what champions do, Henky Ho. That is what they do. Sean says, win it on a set piece just to make it extra spicy for them. Ryan reminding you to hit the like button, of course. We do have a lot of haters, Big Caesar. That's absolutely undeniable. Harvey says if we beat Liverpool at the weekend, they will still attack us. Exactly, 100%. That's exactly how it's going to go. Title number 14 says there is literally no more excuses, a major or bust. I agree with this. Let's see, what else do we have? Demsek, Sophie explaining all the reasons I don't tune into TalkSport. Well, I did post on the community page, and I know a lot of you don't like it, but I was on TalkSport with Natalie, our good friend of the show, Natalie Sawyer and Tony Cascarino. And can I just say, I really like those two because they don't come at you, you know, with the fishing expedition. It's a proper conversation about football. And I think that they're one of the classiest duos on TalkSport, and really want to find out from someone who watches Arsenal day in, day out, what they think based on what they see. So it was a good conversation. And I took the opportunity actually to rave about Jurrien Timber because I thought he was sensational and probably had one of his best games for Arsenal against Leeds. Absolutely brilliant stuff from him. And I also took the opportunity, Tony was asking about our passing, and it was a good, opportunity to rave about Zubimendi, who I say a lot on the show, players who work in the shadows. He works in the shadows, and what he offers defensively and off the ball is far superior to Jorginho. And I know I keep hearing people talk about how he's not as good as the previous two midfielders that were at our club. I don't know what game you're watching, but he controlled a lot of what happened in that game, the tempo of the game, the way he strokes the ball, what Declan Rice is able to do. And slowly, the two of them, I mean, they were so dynamic together. Declan from the dead ball situation, Zubimendi doing what he does in his role. I loved the combination, and I loved what I saw from them too. We talked about Gyökeres as well. I keep rewinding it to just watch him with the hair celebration. I love that. When he adjusts his hair, it's just like, screw you, everybody. And I was able to talk about that as well. So if you would like to go have a listen, please do so. Terence said, we don't care about Palace right now. We stole what we wanted from Palace. Alison said, I listened to you on TalkSport, Sophie. It was nice for a change. I like that. Let's see. Jason says, born in 71, the year of our double. Me too. I was born in 71. The year of our double. That was great. I mean, of course, we were born in 71, but we've seen the videos and we've seen the documentaries and all of that. So, yes. Effie says Anthony Cascarino is very objective and calm. Natalie Sawyer is a gent. Natalie Sawyer says Newman is a wonderful woman. Rebecca Lowe is another wonderful woman. Sophie Nicolau is the third wonderful woman. A lot of love for Natalie, of course. And how great was it that her Brentford won at the weekend? We love Natalie. Let's see. Let's go back to this real quick before Ben hops into the studio. We're expecting him any second now. Let's give people a reminder on the community page that we are live now. Ben will be here any second. I wanted to go back to this new petition that has come up. And of course, have your say in our football democracy. There is a petition, and I'm not singling out Alex here. And so many people have retweeted it and posted it as well. It's a petition to get Ian Wright a statue outside the Emirates. Thousands of signatures already. And I'm sure that many of you have signed it. Has anyone signed this petition? Let me know if anyone has signed it. I would love to know if any of the squaddies have put pen to paper and given this its support, the support. Would love to know. Because I think once you start picking and choosing statues and stuff, and I'm sure if you put it out to vote, that most Arsenal fans would want Ian Wright to have a statue. I just want to add that yesterday was Vic Akers' birthday, a very good friend of the show, a trailblazer, changed women's football, not Arsenal women's football. Vic Akers changed women's football, a quadruple winner, and of course went on to work with Wenger. You just have to listen to people in terms of what they say about Vic. And I think when it comes to statues, you got to be a trailblazer. Like, does Ian Wright deserve a statue more than Leah Williamson, for example, who's been and came through the academy, has won the Euros and lifted the trophy twice with the Lionesses, lifted the trophy with her teammates, won the Champions League? Like, does Ian deserve it more? Or Tony Adams, for example, he's the only player in football to have ever won a title over 3 decades. You know, that's an astonishing achievement. You can disagree with what Tony said about Odegaard, but to win a title over 3 decades, is an incredible achievement. Incredible achievement. Sign me up, says Elliot. Righty is a legend. I'm not denying that he's a legend. I need to sign it. Effie needs to sign it. Terence signed it. Let's see. A lot of people saying that Vic Akers deserves one for sure. Terence says women's football and men's football, two totally different sports. No, it's the same sport. It's just different. It's the same sport. It's football. So if Ian Wright deserves a statue, I think Leah Williamson deserves a statue. The face of Arsenal Women's Football Club. And I just, rattled off what she's won. George Graham. Does George Graham deserve a statue? You could argue that George Graham changed the face of Arsenal the same way Arsene Wenger did in different eras, in different ways. George Graham pulled off one of the greatest achievements in football. The Invincibles. We have two of the most insane achievements in football, right? The Invincibles and having to go to Anfield and score 2 goals and win. We did that. Manchester United, the treble. Manchester City, the treble. That's really hard to win the treble. Barcelona treble winning teams. I mean, George Graham took Arsenal off its arse. He came in at a time and he transformed that team, took no prisoners. People thought he was nuts when he was buying some of the players that he was buying. Terence, I don't want to hear this bullshit about the levels are not the same. Why do we have to compare, right, the actual game, the physicality? Men are stronger, men are faster. We all know this. Do you know that like 40, 50 years ago, women weren't even playing football? Do you know the history? Okay, you can say the levels are not the same. Arsenal women and the Lionesses have won major trophies. I'm still waiting for the England's men's team to do the same. I'm still waiting for the Arsenal men's team to do the same. So if you want to compare, let's talk about who's won what. You can't, if we're going to reward people for what they've achieved at the club and the impact that they've had, then Vic Akers deserves a statue, as does Leah Williamson. I'm not saying Ian Wright doesn't. What Ian Wright is doing for the club now outside of his retirement, inside of his retirement and outside of football, you could say that no other player is doing that. He's taken on the baton. He is the ambassador of all ambassadors. So if we're going to give statues and include the criteria of being an ambassador, of course, he's been exceptionally impactful. I didn't say over Ian Wright, Terence. I said if Ian Wright is going to get a statue, I think Leah Williamson should get a statue too. That's my opinion. Fine, fine, Tammy. Add Kim Little into the mix as well. So listen to what I'm saying, Terence. In your everything in a twist right there. Miles says, you tell him so. If our women have been unbelievable, Ian does deserve a statue for everything he's done for our club as football and ambassador for both men and women. And this is the problem. Where do you stop? Exactly. Where do you stop? Maybe there's, and Bob Wilson. What has Bob Wilson done out with the Willow Foundation? 71 double winner. This is the thing. Where do you stop? Where do you start? So, it's very difficult. But maybe you do one every so many years and one's from the men's team and one is from the women's team. I mean, they just now put the banners up for the Arsenal women, and they've won everything. And you know, do the Invincibles' entire squad deserve, like, you know, maybe there's a mini statue type of thing you could do with the entire squad outside of the Emirates? Maybe. So let me know what you think in the YouTube comments. And Ben is running a little bit late. Of course, there's some breaking news. He's going to be here in about 5 minutes, everybody. 5 minutes. Stay tuned for Ben. It is a busy time. It is a busy time. So let me know what you think if you're listening on replay about the statue situation. I think that Ian Wright is an incredible story, an amazing footballer. He was so fun to watch at Highbury. Jeez, he was electric. Character, charismatic. What he's doing off the field is unbelievable. All I'm saying is, once you start doing that, where do you stop? And if Ian Wright gets one, who else gets one? Let's see. Walk of Fame. I like that, like in the United States. A Walk of Fame. That's a really good idea. Well, you've got the little, you know, fans by the, what do you call it? I know our Mark Gunner Runner has one. My cousin George has one, the plaques and stuff like that. But I do like the idea of a Walk of Fame. John says the club is all that wears its shirts, ladies and men's, and every real fan. Karen says, I'd love a statue of Kim Little and Leah Williamson holding the UCL together. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Righty has done a lot for women's football. And absolutely. And I'm not saying he does not deserve a statue. I'm saying that if he gets one, who else gets one? That's all. Happy bank holiday to you too. Lynn, good evening. Hope you're feeling well. I really appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. A couple of other things I wanted to touch on before Ben joins the show. 250 of you in live chat right now. Hit that like button, kiss it, like it, do all the Glasgow kiss stuff that we have talked about. I'm loving this duo. Arsenal N5 did this Don Berta image. For those listening on audio, it's an image of Andrea Berta as the godfather. And then the BBC put together this image on the right where Arteta is playing chess and he's knocking over one of the pieces. It's a Tottenham piece, of course, checkmate. There was a lot of talk, and even I was asking questions. Where does the power lie? Who has the power at the Arsenal? Is it Berta? Is it Mikel Arteta? Clearly, they just rubbed their hands together and sang that old Snap song, I've got the power. It has been quite the summer transfer window, and apparently it's not about to end. And we're expecting Ben to jump into the studio in just a couple of minutes here to talk us through a potential new signing and a signing of a player that, once again, our sworn enemy was after and has chosen to want to join us. But I don't think any of this stuff happens the way it does without what Karen is saying here, Berta and Arteta working together. And they're certainly proving that. And Andrea Berta is getting a lot of the credit, and rightly so, because the incoming culture has certainly changed. The outgoing culture hasn't yet, but that's not Berta's fault. He's only been here 5 minutes, and those aren't his assets to sell. And those assets aren't exactly at market value right now. Kiwior is probably the most valuable, and Ben will talk to us a little bit about that. But in terms of incoming players, there's no doubt that Berta will get the pat on the back, because haven't seen this before in a really long time. To bring in the level of players that we're bringing in, But also when you hear stories like Eza saying that he phoned Mikel Arteta before he made a decision about Tottenham, that also tells you about the power of Mikel Arteta and that his pedigree is growing within the player space. Eza didn't call Berta, he called Mikel, and then Mikel went into a board meeting, and before you knew it, Eza was a gunner. And I think that Arsenal is always the pull. People kind of forget that we're a big club having done small things in the Premier League. Of course, the last 3 seasons we've finished second. We still haven't won. But before that, we were a massive club. We were a massive club just doing small things. Man City are a smaller club doing huge things. New fans, social media following. Everyone wants to follow a team that wins. They're the new shiny toy. Youth, younger generation, they're going to follow new history like that. But I think it's fair to say that Berta's influence has been insane. And also when you look at, the stories and Mikel Arteta, who's delusional, Yanto, me or someone else? And yeah, we have to credit KSE for signing and backing Berta. And Josh Kroenke's interview, I know that a lot of you sometimes don't want to hear from Josh Kroenke because the be excited thing and everything, but it is a time to be excited. The Kroenkes have totally backed Mikel Arteta and they have backed Berta. And that Eza deal, Josh had a lot to do with, of course, saying yes to that. And I think they're working exceptionally well together. And it's a good thing for the club. Rodney says, Sophie, it's imperative both Berta and Mikel have the meeting of the minds. The objective of funding suitable players who really want to play for the Arsenal, and with Ian Wright influence helps. Well, Ian Wright and the Eza story and all of that was great. When he was showing him his baby Arsenal shirts, the connection of having played for Crystal Palace, that's great. If you get like Saliba doing something like that with Thierry Henry when he signs his new deal would be great. There's a connectivity across multiple cultures. All I'm saying is it's not just Ian Wright, but Eza and Ian Wright was the perfect fit, And if when you look at other players and legends, whether it's Thierry Henry or Patrick Vieira, when Saliba signs or when Saka signs, his new contract, someone like Tony Adams, having been and come through become Arsenal captain at such a young age, all of that stuff. I think we've got a lot of stories. We've had a lot of legends play for this club. We're lucky. Our history and our pedigree is huge. And so you can tap into lots of different things when you want to tell different stories, depending on where a player is from, what his story is. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. Rodney says, Sophie, exactly my point. It's about perfect fits. We should get Dennis Bergkamp and Timber together. Your mind on the connectivity is just great. Imran says, far too early to get on the praise for the Kroenkes. Really? I just cannot, in my mind, endorse any gripes towards the owners after this summer. Really? If anything, our selling value is the one thing. If you're going to nitpick this summer, you can nitpick on the outgoings and what little money we're making, how we've devalued our assets. If anything. And Ryan says, we got the memories younger ones don't. And there's nothing more I want than for this generation, Ryan, to win the league, to know what that feels like, what that tastes like, what the celebration is like, how long it goes on for. The beautiful part of football is winning. And to see this young generation celebrate this team and this manager in that way, who doesn't want that? And there's a connectivity within this team that is really special. You can see it. You can really see it. There's good relationships across the squad. And the appetite to win is there. And it starts from the very top. I mean, you know, I've talked about the Cronkies many times. And you know what, Cincinnati? I like the way you wrote that, by the way. The Cronkies always relied on a manager, football director to understand the market. Yes. And, you know, they hired badly previously. So you can definitely nitpick on that front. You know, did they hire well? No, they didn't. Absolutely didn't. Just jumped out the shower, put the hat on and left the curls out. It's a bit different, but whatever. Sweating like swine. Intermission over. They've backed Mikel. They've shown him faith. They've given him carte blanche. Mikel's been able to have impact on the culture of Arsenal Football Club. Removing the tunnel. That just doesn't happen at every club. But Mikel has backed it up. Some people don't like his philosophies, the light bulb, the speakers. You know, mentorship comes in different forms, utilizing different tools. But now for Mikel, the tools in his toolbox pertaining to assets, players, a squad, it's all there. It's down to him now. He's absolutely got to deliver. M. Dot says, I think Josh has learned a lot since the Cronkies have taken full ownership. Billionaires learn from the mistakes real quick. And you know what's a really good example of this? And thanks for your message, M. Dot. I agree. I watched the Birmingham City documentary. 300 in live chat. Kiss the like button. Glasgow, kiss it. Ben Jacobs coming up in a little bit. Dude is busy. Transfer window is manic. I watched the Birmingham City documentary. And Tom Wagner, who's a super successful guy, all right, and Tom Brady, who's a super successful guy, not only as an athlete, but also off the pitch with investments. And Tom Wagner is no ignorant fool when it comes to business and how to run a business. But my God, did they learn a massive lesson. Thinking that they knew better than to sack a manager who had them in 6th place and then they hire Wayne Rooney and relegated to League One. That was a really expensive lesson to learn. And, you know, I think the Cronkies have learned their lessons as well. So Ben Jacobs has not fallen asleep because the big man is here. Ben, back to Central, they were
how's it going? Better late than never.
Better late than never. There you go, Harvey. I love to prove you wrong. How you doing, Ben? I know listen, I know you're really busy and I know you've got limited time for us tonight, but I so appreciate you popping in. Another breaking news day for the Arsenal. What's happening, Ben? What's going on?
Yeah, busy times. We've just seen a crazy Premier League fixture where Newcastle were cruelly beaten, but fantastic story with a 16-year-old scoring and Hugo Ekitike. And now perhaps Isak, we'll have to wait and see. And obviously from Arsenal's point of view, they might go over the £300 million mark. It depends on the asking price for Hincapié. And then if we think away from Arsenal, there's just about 500 names that spring to mind that are playing in a top 5 league that still could move. I mean, you look at Chelsea alone and you've got Nkunku and Jackson and then Garnacho and Xavi Simons maybe coming the other way. You got Donnarumma, obviously Isak, Wissa, and several others. And then even from Arsenal's point of view, I think we've got some outgoings that we could talk about as well that might be contingent upon the Hincapié deal happening. So I can't remember a deadline week like this. And then when it all shuts, you've got another week of the Saudi window still being open as well.
So let's start with now. You pronounced his name Hincapi. I've heard Hincapié. I'm going to go with what you say, Ben. I watched Leverkusen win the treble-winning season, but I'm not going to sit here and lie. I remember how to pronounce his name. But what is the scoop here? And Tottenham were after him for a while. He's expressed interest in Arsenal. What is the story of this young Ecuadorian player that Arsenal have interest in?
Yeah, first of all, I stand corrected if anybody who is Ecuadorian pronounces it another way. I think my rule is that they join and then I make damn sure I get it right. And the beauty with the Premier League as well is if they join, they go straight to camera. But the funny thing is that sometimes you look at your 2024, 2025, because I do Premier League commentary for TalkSport, and then you're 25, 26, and it's the same player, and they pronounce their name two different ways. And you think, wait a minute. So there might be an anglicized version. I'm going to go with Hincapié. It might be right. It might be wrong, but at least I'm consistently wrong if it is wrong. Situation is this, that Arsenal are serious about doing another attacker. And if you consider the possibility of both Zinchenko and Kiwior departing, it can't hurt them to have a left-sided centre-back who can also play left-back. And this is where the profile fits. Not a new name that they've looked at, but the challenge was always price. And there's a feeling that late in the window, this 60 million release clause will not necessarily be a take it or leave it type situation. And I think Hincapié will push, as he would have done a year ago if he had a concrete Premier League suitor. He's been linked with Chelsea and Liverpool in the past. And Hincapié feels like 45 million euros should be a fair price for a player that wants out. So it's no problem on the player side. And then the club-to-club with Leverkusen and how fast it might advance. Obviously, it has to happen this week. But if it's today, tomorrow, as opposed to final hours or minutes, will depend on likely Jakub Kiwior, because I think they'll put a bid in and start things anyway with Leverkusen. But if Kiwior gets done in the next sort of 24 to 72 hours, then I think we're looking at the middle of the week. If that delays or he doesn't depart, then maybe Arsenal are just a bit reticent about lining everything up, because you can damage your relationship with the player if you say it's all ready to go, but we won't do it without the outgoings. So there is some focus on outgoings. And then from there, Arsenal are prepared to spend, I'm told, something in the ballpark of 40, 45 million euros. So trying to get that release clause down by about 20 million euros. And we'll wait and see what Leverkusen's perspective is. The Arsenal and Spurs head-to-head should not, as I'm told, be presented quite in the same way as Eberechi Eze. Because with Eze, it was a Spurs agreement in principle and it was Spurs terms. And then as I broke, Eze had been on Arsenal's radar in June, and then they came back in late with a lot of the legwork done. And when it was Arsenal Spurs, there was only going to be one winner for Eberechi Eze. In this particular instance, although there was outreach done on the player side by Tottenham, there are firm denials from Spurs that there was any formal bid. So either they backed off because they knew Arsenal were coming, or they had some outreach on the player side and they didn't decide to move. But I don't think this is quite a case of both sides fighting at the same time and Hincapié picking Arsenal. I think the player's known, from what I'm told, that Arsenal were there for 4 or 5 days. And I think Tottenham probably got wind of this a bit earlier than the reporting came out. So even though they held talks with the player, nothing as far as I'm aware on the Leverkusen side, which means that if Arsenal choose to proceed, they should have a relatively clear run. There's no doubt the player wants the move. So if they get a club-to-club agreement and the outgoings, then from there, I think everything else will be relatively routine because the player only wants Arsenal.
Okay, so marks out of 10 on this happening. Cash for Kiwior, what are we looking at here, Ben? Porto, the front runners here, like you've said and reported as well. And Hincapié wants to join the Arsenal. What do you think? Marks out of 10, and how much do you think we'll get for Kiwior?
Yeah, I think Kiwior, a story that I broke a couple of days ago, is loan with a obligation. I don't know if that's conditional obligation. In other words, it starts as an option and becomes an obligation with certain performance or individual related criteria. My sense at the moment is that Arsenal will only accept it if it's a loan with an obligation, unless that conditional obligation is so easy to reach that it's basically the same thing. Sometimes a buying club makes it conditional on something like 5 or 10 appearances just to make sure the player doesn't arrive, get injured for the whole season, and then they're basically stuck with him on an obligation. Money-wise, I'm told it's somewhere around the 25 million euros mark. Maybe even Arsenal are trying to push it a bit closer to the 30 million euros mark. And I think that deal will happen. And I'm not so sure that Hincapié will be about both exits. I think if Kiwior goes, they'll do Hincapié, and I expect the deal to get done. It's just a case of, are they going to, in their mind, overpay, in inverted commas, because it's that time of the window where a buyer has urgency. And sometimes in this scenario anyway, because Leverkusen are not desperate to sell, they've got all the cards. So do they have to go 50-55, match the release clause? And I think they might go a bit higher because they want the player. And if Kiwior goes, they'll have need for the player. And then definitely if Zinchenko departs as well. So I do expect this deal to get done. I'm not going to put a mark on it because I feel like as journalists, we should stick to the facts and where we're at and not sort of give people a catchy little 7, 8 out of 10 to go away
Sure.
with, saying where we're at, what might happen, and then trying to report with facts. But I do think there's a very realistic chance that this can happen. So you can put your own number out of 10 or 100 on that. And then with Zinchenko, it's fascinating really because he's not had that many concrete options, even though it's been clear throughout the window that Arsenal would be prepared to sell. And the number that they're looking to sell at is not a massive issue. I think it's in the region of 15 million pounds or 20 million euros. I would imagine for some clubs, Zinchenko's wage is relatively high. But other than that, I think club-to-club negotiation will not be a massive issue. I'd heard Fulham, and it was first reported by The Sun, I believe, in June. And I think that's accurate, but only if Anthony Robinson goes. And at this stage, I'm not aware of anything developing there. It was Saudi Arabia, I was told, to watch for Anthony Robinson, but no bid at the moment, which means maybe the player doesn't want to go. But I do think there'll be 1 or 2 clubs on the lookout for a relatively versatile left back. So I can see a situation where Zinchenko goes, but I don't think it's Zinchenko, Kiwior, or no Hincapié. I think if Kiwior goes to Porto, then I fully expect Arsenal to get moving to try and get the defender from Leverkusen.
You mentioned the Anthony Robinson thing and Saudi. Before I get on to a name that's kind of come up in the last few days, any news on Martinelli? Of course, he didn't play a part in the game at the weekend. Is there something brewing there, Ben, or not?
Not necessarily. I mean, time is running out. The Saudi market for the Saudi Pro League clubs closes on the 7th of September. So there is a possibility because Saudi clubs are definitely still looking for stars. But I wouldn't want to get people overexcited about either signing Martinelli or those that think it's going to sort of offset the window a little bit financially. Because at the moment, I don't have any clear indication that Gabriel Martinelli is necessarily looking to move this late in the window. Of course, it can be a fluid situation, but I don't think there's anything major to report at the moment. It's all quiet on the Martinelli front. And I think we have to be respectful to Martinelli and maybe his own stability now the season has started and understand whether this is going to be a story. So I don't think it's one to kind of put out there at the moment. I don't think it's one to report on yet. What I would say is just to repeat what I said earlier in the window, that there has been Saudi interest in Gabriel Martinelli from Al Nassr in particular. And you've got Al Ittihad, who are also looking for attackers at the moment, but it feels like they're more central kind of players, which is where Rodrigo Moura, the Portuguese wonder kid, and also even Bruno Fernandes or Casemiro come from. They all share one common thing. They play through the centre. That's not really Gabriel Martinelli. He's a left winger. So a few Saudi clubs that at the beginning of the window wanted a left-sided player or a versatile attacker that can play on the left-hand side have found one. Think about Joao Felix. He's probably been signed as a number 10 for Al Nassr, but he can also filter out on that left-hand side. So I think what we've sort of seen from Arsenal is 2 clues. The first is Martinelli hasn't extended, even though those talks started before the window opened. So they are obviously open to an exit in some capacity, whether now or in the future. And the second clue is obviously Trossard got improved terms, but only late in the window and not improved length. So that again tells you that throughout the window, and I think we've said this on previous shows, it was both extremes for each player, that they would rather explore an exit or extend them or improve their contract. Trossard had an opportunity with Brentford, but they never bid. Dortmund were another suitor at the table. They didn't meet Arsenal's valuation, so nothing came of it. And then at the end of the window, they say, okay, it's been maybe a bit of an unsettling summer with a lot of speculation. We're going to give you improved terms. But that doesn't mean that in a year's time or even in January, they won't entertain offers. And even Man City, by the way, at the beginning of this window, they extended Ilkay Gundogan, but there's still a chance he leaves in the final window, the same window in which he got given improved terms and extended. So this is what clubs do, because they know if the player doesn't leave, they don't want to feel hard done by or not part of the plan. So it's kind of quite smart. Martinelli hasn't had that extension yet. I think if one happened, it would probably be just to sort of protect the value and again, make the player feel, if he is going to stay for this season, very welcome and important. But that wouldn't mean that we wouldn't be talking about this again in 12 months' time. And that's where we're at. So whereas we cannot emphatically discount Saudi trying, it's basically quiet for now on the Martinelli front. And I think if Hincapié comes with Eze arriving, because he can play on the left and so can Noni Madueke, that will be Arsenal's window for incomings done. But in a year's time, if Martinelli and or Trossard departs, I think they'll be seriously in the market for a box office left winger, a starting left winger.
Okay, so I have a million of them asking you. I think you just answered this question, but Jay and Demsek and Ish and many, many others are asking about Arnau Martinez from Girona. Are Arsenal in the business, Ben, of looking for a right back? It wasn't on the bingo card. But I haven't seen too much about this, and I don't know if you have either.
Yeah, this is a player, I think he's only 22 years of age, and he's one that obviously has come through the City Football Group kind of pathway or process. And I could see the possibility of some defensive cover at right back with a young signing kind of for the now or for the future. I know they've looked at Arnau Martinez. I'm not aware of reports of a formal bid, but we're late in the window and things are always a bit more fluid than that anyway. You don't really put down formal offers because then either you're bidding blind or you're waiting for the response, and that's not what you want. You pick up the phone, you have verbal talks, you sound out whether or not anything is possible. So let's see if anything develops. All I really know at the moment regarding the right back position is that Tomiyasu obviously has gone, and Martinez is very versatile, and that's the kind of player that Mikel Arteta likes. If you look, for example, at his progression playing for Spain at youth level, he can be a makeshift centre-back as well. And there's only 2 years left on his contract. I'm not aware of any options to extend. Maybe they're having talks that I'm not aware of. But when you've got a player that's got 2 years left on his contract, he's 22 years of age, from Girona or City Football Group's point of view, they have to make a decision. Is he going to extend? Does he want another opportunity? Or do you cash in? So I've got nothing really to add on the formal bid side of things. I know they've looked at him. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that a right back or a right centre-back, equally as versatile as Hincapié on the left-hand side, could come in, but it's not the priority at the moment. If the window shuts and they only got Hincapié and Kiwior and Zinchenko out, they'll be delighted with that. Everything else would be seen as a bonus.
Yeah. Any more outgoings for Arsenal, Ben, that you're aware of? Reece Nelson, any news on that? Fabio Vieira, any news on those players?
Yeah, I think they're two that they'd like to get out. I still think that Fulham have got a big decision to make because they want two attackers in the final days of the window. So you've got Hotel, which was an exclusive I broke. You've got Raheem Sterling, maybe because Chelsea's price drops or Sterling makes a wage concession. You got Nelson, which felt quite advanced to Fulham and then died down a little bit. But it wouldn't surprise me if they return. It's not entirely dead, that deal. And it's a surprise to some from the Arsenal point of view that he hasn't already gone to Fulham from earlier in the window. But advanced talks, as they sometimes tend to do, they don't always stay advanced. And there's obviously been a roadblock there. So now we have to wait and see if it's resurrected. I think Fulham are going to go into the final few days of the window with 4 or 5 attack-minded targets. Kevin at Shakhtar is another one. And they're going to have to determine which 2 economically and feasible are possible. And it wouldn't remotely surprise me if they come back in for Reece Nelson. So that one's a possibility. And obviously Fabio Vieira, we've heard him linked with various clubs, but nothing has developed at this point. Another one that Arsenal would be prepared to sell, I would imagine in the region of 20, 25 million pounds. I don't have an exact number, but there's a few clubs again that have given him due consideration. We had heard, I think a little bit earlier in the window, more of a likelihood that he might go abroad, and that didn't quite materialize. There was opportunities for him in Portugal and in Germany, and I think there was even an approach from Turkey as well, but for whatever reason it never really materialized into a sort of concrete bid. And then, as I broke, West Ham were giving him due consideration as well and have missed out on some other targets in the centre of the park. So let's see whether they turn that interest into a bid late in the window as well. I think unlike Zinchenko, who doesn't have sort of 7, 8, 9 different options, it feels like at the price Arsenal are prepared to do Vieira for, and his wage is not astronomical compared to the rest of the Arsenal squad, I sense we'll get a bit of late window movement, and it wouldn't at all surprise me if he does end up leaving between now and the end of the window. And keep an eye on West Ham, because like I say, that interest hasn't gone away. They've perhaps moved on to trying for other targets that they haven't landed, but you're going to see a lot of movement from West Ham. It's not just about incomings. There may be other outgoings as well. Lucas Paquetá still has quite an open future. Mohamed Kudus has already gone. So West Ham are going to get going in these final days. Fabio Vieira and West Ham at the back of your mind, because even though there are other options, they still could come and bid.
Yeah, that would be perfect. I know you've got to go, Ben. We've got just a couple more for you. I can see you, like, Ben's like multitasking here, sending messages and stuff.
Phone is going every 2 minutes.
One rumor that continues to kind of circle is Morgan Rogers. Any news on Morgan Rogers, even if it's not us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Arsenal have signed Eberici Eze, and he's versatile and he's a 10, and everyone loves Morgan Rogers. But if you have already had the window that Arsenal have had and strengthened in different attacking areas, I don't see them in for Morgan Rogers. I mean, that would make it 1,000 out of 10 window if Arsenal could in any way pull that off. I understand that the advantage of Morgan Rogers is he's an attacking midfielder. He can go right and left, but versatility is only good up to a certain point, especially when you've signed a starter like Eze, because if Eze is to be versatile and keep starting, he might get some game time in wide areas, particularly on the left-hand side. And then you think of Odegaard and Zubimendi and Rice. And the danger is if you have too many versatile players, even if they're not identical profiles, the player that's been sold on Arsenal that says, where am I going to get my second position game time, goes, wait a minute. And you can understand how if Ethan Nwaneri signs and thinks my second opportunity is as a 10, but then Eze arrives, and then if Saka's injured for a little bit and Nwaneri thinks I'm going to get some time on the right, but Noni Madueke goes, I've just joined. And then if Noni Madueke doesn't get time on the right, but he's been told you get time on the left, but then he's like, wait a minute, Martinelli's here, Trossard's here, Eze can go on the left-hand side. So imagine if you have Morgan Rogers as well, it would be great on paper if you were playing Football Manager, but you've got to keep everybody happy, and that's an astronomical outlay. So I'm not seeing anything developing with Arsenal now, but it could be a good thing if nothing happens with Morgan Rogers, which is the most likely scenario, because who's to say that a club like Arsenal couldn't be back in for him in a year's time, when maybe there's more realistic chance that he might leave Aston Villa, especially if they don't get Champions League football. At the moment, what we know about Morgan Rogers is that Tottenham like the profile, but again, same story. Not sure that Villa are going to sell this late in the window. Not sure they need to due to PSR. And a very underrated point with Aston Villa and PSR is that they've satisfied it for the last financial year by selling their women's teams to their parent company. So if they run into the same challenges in a year's time, and remember, Jacob Ramsey's gone to Newcastle as well, and Leon Bailey's departed, but if they run into the same financial issues in a year's time, then they're in exactly the same position as now, because you've still got the month of June to work out your finances for this financial year in the next calendar year. So Villa have got no reason to be like, yikes, we better sell Rodgers now and satisfy this financial year, and then give ourselves 7 days in the window to spend some of that money if they really needed to sell Rodgers. And we don't know, because they might get Champions League football and be fine, or go on a big European run. But if they need it, they've basically got May to plan, June to sell, and even a near miss period in July in the next financial year. So I'm not expecting them to be bullied into anything. And that's why I think it's a non-starter for Spurs as well. I think we're looking at a desperate bid to try and get Savinho. They're probably not going to get Nico Paz, maybe Bilal Al-Khanous, who we know that Crystal Palace like at my club, Leicester City. And then who's to say they won't try for Johan Wissa because of the Thomas Frank connection, even though Newcastle are the ones really at the table there. But Rodgers, I think, will end up staying at Villa. And then the last point on all of this is, if there is a window for Morgan Rodgers now, keep an eye on Chelsea, because Chelsea are looking to add in that position. And we're working under the very logical assumption it's going to be Garnacho on the left, Xavi Simons through the centre. And that is my feeling. So I'm not selling a Chelsea Rodgers dream at this point. But what I would say is that Aston Villa have held conversations about Nico Jackson. Aston Villa are holding conversations about Christopher Nkunku. And before Chelsea pull the trigger on Xavi Simons, if that's the route they take, I think they would ask the question about Morgan Rodgers first, because the dream for Chelsea would be Garnacho and Rodgers. So if Villa want Jackson, but they can't make the finances work, if Villa want Nkunku, but they can't make the finances work, and there's a genuine interest in both players. And remember, Unai Emery had Nico Jackson at Villarreal. So if that progresses, rather than Chelsea just going, give us 60, 70 million or whatever the price is, I'm sure Chelsea would say, what about Rodgers? And if Chelsea can't get Rodgers, having that conversation where they've got player leverage, I don't think anyone's going to get Rodgers. And that's my feeling. He feels untouchable at the moment. But if there's one side that could surprise us with that 1% chance, I think it's more likely to be Chelsea than Spurs or Arsenal.
Makes sense. So there you have it, kids. No, there's no Fofana. And, maybe there'll be... I know a lot of Arsenal fans are dreaming of this last-minute Rodrigo thing. That's not happening. I'm hoping next time we talk to Ben that he has news on Saliba and Saka's new contracts. Those are the two that I want next, Ben, more than anything.
They take time, but they'll both get done, in my opinion. I mean, we know Real Madrid sees Saliba as this sort of long-term dream, but players can extend and still leave within a matter of years. So the contract renewal is about rewarding a player, having them in the short term, hoping that they stay in the long term, which you would always expect at a massive club like Arsenal, because you're not extending in the same way Wolves extended Cunha, knowing they were going to sell him imminently. And Saka's just Arsenal through and through. So one of the reasons why it's gone quiet is not out of any setback or fear. It's gone quiet because you can have confidence that these players want to extend. So in an open window, and the first window of Andrea Berta, the focus is always on other things. It's the same with Man United and Kobbie Mainoo. It's the same with almost every contract renewal. I think the only one I can think of off the top of my head is Ruben Diaz. So I think it's Berta's first window. We did a show at the beginning of the window, and I said by the end of the window, Arsenal's total spend will be the same, if not more, as Liverpool's total spend. Their volume of business will be the same as Liverpool's volume of business. Judge the window at the end, not in the month of June, because July the 1st, he's going to get going. That's kind of happened. And then September the 1st, watch this space, because I don't think that we'll have to wait too long for some kind of update or progression on these contract renewals, because it will be the next thing on the list after a very busy summer. Saka, for me, is not in doubt at all. I think he would sign today if they put a bit of paper in front of him. But of course, you've got agents and you've got just little things that you still have to discuss professionally. Saliba, everyone's a bit more worried about because of the Real Madrid interest, but I still expect him to sign.
Ben, I just wanted to say thank you so much. You have come on this show and in your time, your spare time, join me and the squaddies. They adore you. They think that you are legit, such an awesome human being, let alone what you do. We appreciate everything that you've been for us this summer. We've loved it. We hope that you've enjoyed coming on too. And you've done an amazing job. I mean, this summer, I think, has been, put Ben Jacobs up there with the best of them. And, your hard work is paying off. And we so appreciate the fact that, you come on the show and you talk with us. We were one of the first podcasts to have you on, and we're really proud of that. And we thank you. And, maybe when all this is done in a couple months, you can come back on and we could do a Q&A where they just ask you questions, because they got tons of questions about PSR and FFP and things that I just can't answer. So thank you, Ben. And I wonder if on that last day you will all be busy with an absolute shocker. We'll see.
I'm kind of excited and terrified and tired and enthralled, but yeah, it's going to be box office. Everybody loves the deadline day, and this one should be very special. But no, thank you for having me. I said many times it's very kind of people to give compliments, but look, we're just here to report and tell the stories to the best of our abilities. It should never be about us. It should always be about the transfers. And I feel it's always important to support fan-led podcasts and to be accountable as a journalist. We'll get things right, we'll get things wrong, but it's always nice to engage. And I think it's important that fans get the opportunity through you or directly to ask us questions and to call out reporting and to put scrutiny on our work. It's sort of nice in some ways that we've had this emergence over the summer as well of a lot of in the know accounts. Hand of Arsenal, for example, is one of my favorites. And the work they do is fantastic, but it's sort of contingent. And I think it's fun, but it's contingent on the drama of not knowing who they are, because they have to be able to be sort of covert. And I love that because it gives them an advantage over us as journalists, because you can be gaining stuff and probably people around the club are going, how are they getting that? Who is they? They might be someone on the inside. And I think that drama really adds to it, particularly on social media, and they do a wonderful job. And often they know their individual clubs far better than we do. But I think as journalists, we have to put our face, however ugly it is, to these things. And we have to explain our stories. And like I say, we'll at times disagree with the fan bases on our opinions or our reporting. We'll get accused of having agendas. At other times we'll be loved by fan bases. It's that old adage during the window. You bring good news, you're the best journalist in the world. You bring bad news, you're the worst journalist in the world. But I think it is just important that we support excellent shows and streams like this, because it's this sort of new trend we've probably seen in the last 5 years where you're becoming bigger than some mainstream media. And even if the numbers are smaller, the audience is one very specific and passionate and awesome demographic. And you get the opportunity to kind of have a very specific and very engaged audience that, you wouldn't find on a normal TV show, because half of them would turn off because they're Chelsea or Man U fans. I think you do a brilliant job, and that's why I come on, and that's why I give my time, and that's why I enjoy it. So hopefully I can add something, but obviously it's not just me. You get a range of fantastic guests. So enough of the praise for me, praise for you. Keep up the good work, and long may our collaborations continue.
Well, I appreciate that, Ben. Thank you so much. You summarized that beautifully. I'm going to stay on and do a couple housekeeping issues with the squaddies. Thank you. Beautifully said. And we'll talk to you again soon, mate.
Look forward to it. Enjoy deadline. I don't even know what we call it, because I keep calling it deadline day week, but I feel like it's deadline day, and then the week needs to be called something else, like the ending. If anyone can think of a name, let me know. But yeah, always a pleasure, and speak soon.
Thanks a lot, mate. I hope you've got a holiday booked for after all this
nonsense. I have actually. I'm going to Hong Kong.
Oh, God, very nice. Enjoy. Ben Jacobs, thank you so much. Thanks a lot to Ben for joining us. Brilliant stuff from Ben. Make sure you give him a follow. I'm sure many of you are already. Lots of love coming from for Ben. He's what I love is what he said there at the end about new media and YouTube channels and the value of them and how journalists perceive them, and the way that Ben talked about embracing an account like Hand of Arsenal, who's been spot on about everything this summer. I think that's that's kind of fearless journalism on his front, to come from a traditional background, but to also embrace all the newness and what's going on and what happens, especially in the space of the transfer window and stuff like that. I think it's what he just said is bang on. You do not hear a lot of journalists talk like that. And so really respect Ben's opinion on all of this stuff. Exactly. So nice to hear the fact that both of these excellent people admire the work of one another. Well deserved. And Marina here really is a nice guy. And it's great to hear him talking about and, saying out loud as a journalist that someone like Hand of Arsenal has been Really an incredible source of information during this transfer window. Okay, squaddies. Well, we did a little bit of watch along towards the end of the Liverpool game. We talked a little bit about the petition for Ian Wright, and please don't misconstrue anything I said. Like Terence, I think, is the only one that did. All I'm saying is if Ian Wright gets a statue, who else gets one? I think we have so many legends and so much rich history and so many people we love and adore who've achieved great things. Bob Wilson is the one that Demsek, I think, mentioned that really springs to mind that I think would be amazing as well. So let's see what happens on that front. Happy birthday to our good friend of the show, Vic Akers. It was his birthday yesterday. I sent him all your love, squaddies, and he's looking forward to coming back on the show this coming season. And of course, we talked to Ben about the latest news with regards to Arsenal and the Bayer Leverkusen treble-winning Ecuadorian defender, Piero Hincapi. I'm going to say Hincapi now, Piero Hincapi. I wanted to talk about some other stuff, but we'll get to it in terms of the left-back position. I think we'll do that with the Arsenal Opinion podcast, guys. So here's the schedule. I'm doing a pre-record for you, something special tomorrow with Kevin Hatchard. Kevin Hatchard, of course, who's the commentator for Amazon on Bundesliga and is the master of Bundesliga. And we're going to talk to him and get much more in depth. He's going to give us some info on Hincapi and the type of player that he is. I know that a lot of you watch Bayer Leverkusen during the treble winning year and you know the player. But of course, Kevin takes us into the deep a little bit further and gives us the edge when it comes to breaking down players from the Bundesliga. Then on Thursday, we have our second episode of the Roundtable. If you missed the first episode with Tom and Harry, it's a great football conversation. You can go check it out. It's an evergreen type of show. We talk a little bit about the impact of Eze, how Arsenal will line up. A great question from Andy, one of our listeners, on what their starting 11 would look like in a low block and versus a more attacking team. That was awesome. And of course, Rebecca Lowe was on last week and she too spoke about Eze and Mikel Arteta and gave some fantastic insights from Old Trafford, in particular on Mikel Arteta, how she found him after spending the last few years interviewing him after NBC broadcasts. And she also gave a great anecdote on Dowman as well, after sitting behind him at Old Trafford, right behind the Arsenal bench. So those are the things you can go back and watch on replay. So the Roundtable on Thursday with the Arsenal Opinion boys. We will be talking all things Arsenal, and I'll tap into them on this left-back position as well. There'll be a great agenda, so you won't want to miss that. Times will go up on the community page, and Chief Like Officer Tammy Steele, I'll be sure to get it right this time. Sometimes StreamYard just does what it wants. And then on Friday, I believe at noon Pacific time, 3 Eastern, which means 8 o'clock in the UK, but that might change, is Stevie Nicol, Liverpool legend, is going to come in and talk to us about the big game this weekend. So we'll be previewing that with all of our guests. So stay tuned, and hopefully you guys can join on Friday and hear what the Liverpool legend has to say about this particular team this season. And I'm going to really go at him the way they go at our players, because right now for me, Wirtz is looking like a flop. 2 games, so 2 games, I hear you. But wouldn't it be great? No. I mean, I don't want him to flop. I don't want the guy to fail, but he's really done very little. So anyway, that's all I've got time for. It's been an epic Monday Madness show. Thank you so much for tuning in late. Hope you've all enjoyed your bank holiday Monday. Please don't forget to go check out the new article at highburysquad.com on the articles page. And I believe that is it. So lots of good content coming your way. Look out for the Kevin Hatchard video, as I said. I will post it as soon as it is ready. And we've got more guests coming, more great guests. It's going to be very exciting here at Squad Central this season. Well done to the Arsenal again for smashing Leeds. And of course, coming up very soon, our Arsenal women will be kicking off their season. And we will be having a kickoff show with myself, Albert and Demian as well. So I will announce that on the community page too. In the meantime, love you lots. Thank you so much for hanging out. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Don't forget to tell your parents. Don't forget to tell your friends about it. Parents. What was I thinking? Parents. Maybe I was thinking of Tom Canton again. Me being his podcast mother. Anyway, have a great evening, everybody. Don't forget to tell your loved ones you love them. And of course, you know the rules. At ease, everyone. Share the show with your mates. That's what I meant.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.